So I am one of three in the family. I have a brother and a sister that are both older than me. And I have a mum and a dad, but my dad left when I was 5. And my dad had issues with alcohol and drug abuse. And I remember being really young and not really understanding why my dad wasn't the same as everybody else's. So my parents separated, my dad left, and the interactions I would have with my dad when I was a young girl were challenging because my dad was mentally unwell himself. So he would pick us up and we would go back to where he was staying, and he wouldn't interact with us. He would feed us, and that would be his way of keeping us entertained. So he wouldn't wake up in the morning, he'd get up at like 11 a.m. and I was 6 years old, I was up a lot earlier, and instead he would just give me a massive box of biscuits and he would sleep in because he'd been up late, he'd been drinking, drugs, whatever. And yeah, so when I was growing up, I was always led to food, and he would never cook in the evening. So we would have takeaways and we never have home cooked foods. And he would emphasize that the takeaway was a treat, and we were really lucky to be having it. And a lot of emphasis would be over that set meal. So whenever I would spend time with him, it was just so food focused. And really, all I wanted was for my dad to play with me or, take an interest in my life. And there I was with food, and he never gave me that, and he never has done to this day. So I know that my relationship with food came from that moment in my life, and it all started from there. And now I'm older and I've done the deep work and I've identified why I became an overeater. It all stems back from those moments. And actually, I just wanted my dad to love me and give me time and care and attention, and I never got that. So instead, I just got food, and I learned how to soothe myself with food. And that's something that I've had to address, obviously, as I've got older. So alongside that, I also had a really petite sister, and I was always bigger than her. And I was born a natural redhead. So for me, my childhood was quite difficult with school because I was a redhead and I was overweight. So there was definitely bullying. I mean, one day I had a whole jacket potato with cheese and beans thrown at my head in the canteen. And I remember going up to secondary school, being the year below my sister, and my sister was so petite, she was quite popular. And I remember my first day, I walk into the playground and I'm with her at the time. And I walk up to her group that she was in, and one of the boys, I remember his name is called Zach. He said, "Oh, are you Izzy's sister?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Really?" And looked me up and down. And even at that age, I could identify what was going on for sure. And it made me feel so inadequate. And I was always in my sister's limelight, really, at that point. My sister was also very, very academic. And I envied that for sure, because I struggled at school. But then looking back, being a child that was getting bullied for the way she looked a lot of the time and had severe insecurities, how can you possibly learn as a child if you're in an emotional state, frequently through your hours at school? It makes it impossible to learn. So I actually look back and give myself sympathy when I think about, being in school. But with Izzy, my sister, she had this ability to be able to eat 2 biscuits and leave the rest, or she'd get, you know, an Easter egg and it would last her months. Whereas Emily, I was this child that would just eat everything and eat it quickly. And I think a big piece as well came from my mum bringing us up, a single mum. You know, she would eat leftovers. We didn't have a lot of money. And if we were having something, you know, something tasty, it was a treat. And I was so petrified that someone would take it away. So I would eat it so quickly. And yeah, but with my sister, she had this ability to really, you know, feel satisfied with smaller portions. And she was always so in tune with her body. But with me over here, you know, I was secret eating. I was eating way past being full. And I always wondered why she could do it, but I couldn't, and I could never really interpret why that was. You know, why was I getting bigger? Why did I have food on the mind so much more than she did? You know, why was I not as clever as her? Why was I not as pretty as her? And yeah, I guess I wondered that for a lot of my childhood, really. And it was only when I got to the age of around 16, my mum had PCOS. So it became a topic of conversation because I started to getting difficult symptoms. I had a lot of hair growth, facial hair, you know, belly hair around my nipples, hair on the arms. And I got really insecure about it. And I, you know, constantly was saying, I'm struggling with my weight, you know, it's a big problem. So we went to the doctors and they said, you've got PCOS. And I was like, okay. And they said, you are going to really struggle to lose weight. And I was like, okay, here's some metformin. This will help you. Now, at the time, I had no idea what metformin was. I didn't have any idea what PCOS was. But the messaging I got from that one day was, oh, you've got this and you're going to really struggle with your weight. Here's some tablets and off you go. And it is what it is. So of course I leave, I've got these tablets and I think, great, you know, I'm going to be thin in, you know, a couple of weeks' time. And I started taking them. I knew nothing about them at this point. And safe to say, nothing changed for me. You know, my behaviors with food didn't change and I didn't see an improvement in symptoms. So I didn't maintain it. You know, I was 16, I was out doing bits all the time. You know, I wasn't very vigilant with my medications, and I gave it such a short amount of time. But for me, like, I gave it a short amount of time in the sense of, you know, I didn't trial it for 6 months, for instance. I remember I trialed it for a short time, saw it wasn't really doing anything. I was like, nah, whatever. But then I spent a long time not really understanding what my PCOS really meant. And also in a very, very limited mindset of you'll never, ever be able to, you know, be healthy and have a body that you're connected with and manage your weight because you've got PCOS and you're pretty much a lost cause. And that's how I felt when I left, which in hindsight, when I look back, is so wrong now, because actually having PCOS does not mean you're a write-off and you can't, you know, manage your weight. And there's actually benefits to having PCOS. So it just was a shame at such a young age that I did not understand, and I wasn't given that support to help me understand what my hormonal implication really meant. So that led me to just continuing to eat, because I thought, well, to be honest with you, you know, I'm not going to be able to fix this. So I'll just lean into being this overweight person and that will be me. But the problem is it was always a seesaw of emotions, because yes, whatever, I'll just have PCOS, I'll get overweight and I'll eat what I want. But on the other hand, you know, I was so mortified about my body, and I wanted to fit into my sister's clothes and I couldn't. And she'd catch me trying to get into them and scream at me for stretching them. And I wanted to blend in at school and not be the, you know, the ugly younger sister. Like, I wanted all of those things. So it was very like seesaw effect. Then I then got together with a guy, and it was well, even now, like even talking about it now, a relationship that's taught me a lot and actually made me reevaluate my whole life. So I was with this guy for quite a while, and he was a very controlling character. And he openly admitted when it came to the end of the relationship that he fed me because the bigger I got, the less people would look at me. And he openly shared that with me. Now, I take responsibility in the sense of I put my hand to mouth, but equally through my relationship, you know, it was eat, 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 more food, more food. And I was with somebody that was incredibly insecure. And yeah, it was a very damaging relationship, because on one side he would say, I fed you up because the bigger you got, you know, the less people looked at you, on one side of the coin. But then the other, it's you're fat, you're disgusting, you know, no one would love you. And all of those really hurtful pieces of messaging that, you know, they break you at the time. And it's really difficult. And I left that relationship, the biggest I have ever been, and feeling incredibly out of control with my body. And, you know, I don't wish for anybody to have a relationship like that, but a lot of women do. You know, we go through this journey where we're with a partner, and they actually, you just strip you of all your confidence, and they say incredibly hurtful things. And if you are a sensitive person like I am, that hits home, and it stays embedded inside of you unless you address it, you know? So after that relationship, I was at that point, I was working for BMW, and I was doing pretty well in my career. I have an all or nothing mentality, and you know, I really enjoyed that job to some degree, but I was finding myself leaving work, not having any confidence to actually enjoy my social life. I'd have a snack drawer at work, so I would just eat my way through my shifts. And yeah, it would just be, I was young, you know, and I was single at this point after this quite damaging relationship. And I just saw myself getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I was like, this is great that my career is going in a great direction, but I'm really miserable. And when I think about that as well, I was in the automotive industry and there wasn't many women, but I was not the woman that, you know, all the guys were chatting about. I heard the conversations that went on about those women that they all desired to take out for a drink or something like that. And I guess a big part of me wanted to be that woman, especially after years and years of, you know, being the, oh God, that you can't possibly be Izzy's sister, or, you know, you're not attractive, or you're fat, you know, or I've got another story I must share with you in a minute. But you know, I was in that working environment, and I wanted to be desired, I guess, at that point, you know. So, and just to go back to a point, I remember a previous guy I dated, you know, when I was a little bit younger, and we were at Thorpe Park, and we were waiting for a ride, and he pointed at my top lip, and he was like, what is that hair on your top lip? And I just remember being absolutely mortified. And it's moments like that that you carry through. And again, at that point, I didn't really understand about the PCOS and the hair growth. So, yeah, but it is moments like that where you lose your confidence in that moment and you just don't know what to say. Anyway, back to my automotive days. So I was doing well and then getting bigger. And I remember, like, I bent down at work once, and my trousers ripped from front to back in the middle of everyone in the showroom, and we had customers there and all sorts. And that was my pivotal moment of, you need to sort yourself out, Emily. This has gone too far, absolutely too far. I had to sort of shuffle my way out of the showroom with a coat wrapped around me, and it was just awful. So I remember that's when I was like, enough is enough. You've got to take control. So my version of taking control at that moment was I starved myself. I have this ability to really go all or nothing. And it's really fantastic sometimes with some things in my life. But at this moment, it was not productive. So I basically tried to get by on as little food as I possibly could whilst trying to manage my career and show up for work and do a great job. And I remember it got to the point where I got pulled into a meeting and my management were questioning me on my cognitive ability and asking me if I was okay. And that was a big wake up call for me. So at that point, and I remember I got the color of a car wrong that I sold the day before. I couldn't even remember what color it was. And that's when I was like, wow, this is having an effect on my brain. But of course I was like, I just want to be thin. So I'm just going to do it. Come on. And that's when I went from about a size 16 to 18 down to a size 14 at that point. I then decided to get a coach because I was like, oh, yes, I've made some success with my starvation diet. I'm going to get a coach. And I remember he gave me really rigid meal plans. There was no healthy fats in the meal plan, looking back. And it was restrictive, 100%. And I followed this plan to a T for 2 weeks. I gave it everything and I ticked every box. And I remember I went to weigh in and do the check-in and I hadn't lost any weight. So I sent him the information. I said, I haven't lost any weight. And he messaged me back and said, you must have cheated. And this is something that is, when I look back now, is so unbelievably wrong, because he didn't ask me about my toilet regulation, my hormone function, my sodium, my stress levels, my sleep qualities, all of these factors which would contribute towards your scale reading. He didn't go through any of that. He just went straight to, you've cheated. And the thing is when you've been a bigger person all your life, you haven't got a huge amount of resilience when it comes to anything to do with your weight, any subject or comment. You're sensitive and it hurts in your stomach because you just want to crack this so much. Because if you think about it, you thought about your weight and your relationship with food pretty much daily. Well, for me, it was daily, intervened in my life all the time. So for me, when he accused me of cheating, it just broke me. It absolutely broke me, because I was like, yeah, there's another person that just doesn't believe in me. And I felt completely lost at that point. So I made a pretty big decision after that. So I got rid of him, and it was very much like, I can't do this. I fell into the trap of, I can't do this. If this top coach couldn't support me, then I just can't do this. Again, I'm not destined for it. So I'm just going to eat loads and deny myself and, pretend I'm happy. So I fell back into that. And then after a while, I decided I'm going to leave my job and I'm going to take a 6-month, gap year, something like that. I never did that after college. I never went to university. I never had any breaks. I just worked. So I saved up some money and I took 6 months. And I decided, right, I am going to use the 6 months to get thin. And that is exactly what I did. I decided that I was going to quit my job. And then I literally could staff myself because I didn't need my cognitive ability to show up for work anymore. So no one was holding me accountable. So I was like, screw it. I'm just going to go to the gym loads. I'm literally not going to eat. All will be great. And before you know it, I've decided I'm now going to do a bodybuilding competition, because for me, all I want to do is blend in with other women on a stage and be a lean woman. And I know I can do it. So I decided to crack on and start prepping for a bodybuilding show in the bikini category. So I would have to get very, very lean. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I got a coach. And he recommended to me that I take drugs. I denied. And I'm really thankful that was a flat no. No matter how much I wanted to be thin, that was a flat no. And I'm so thankful that I knew that, and I executed that. But I want to raise something here. So this coach, not only did he ask me to take drugs, I'd got down to 60 kilograms, which is, a very, very healthy weight for me, for my composition. And he said to me, Emily, you are fat. You need to take drugs. At this point, when I was 60 kilograms. And I just remember thinking, well, no, believing actually, okay, I'm fat at 60 kilograms. I am fat. And he's telling me I need drugs. And I remember believing him that I was fat, but not allowing the drug piece. So instead, because I wouldn't take the drugs to help me lose the fat quicker, I was then put on a diet that was sort of 600 to 800 calories a day, 6 workouts and cardio every day. So 6 workouts a week, cardio every day. And I ticked the boxes. I absolutely did. But it destroyed me. And I remember as well, it was a really difficult time, because when I took the time away from work and I'd gone through this sort of 6-month break and everything, I was in the gym a lot, and I met a guy in the gym, and I'd started losing the weight, and thought I really liked him. And I remember we started sort of dating, and then just out of nowhere, he didn't reply to any of my messages. And then I find out that he'd been away for the weekend with his ex-partner, and he just never responded to any of my messages. We were supposed to be like full-blown dating. And then I had people come to me in the gym on the Monday morning and say, Emily, like, you need to know this. Like, he's been going around telling everybody that your body really repulses him, and he'd much rather be dating this other girl in the gym. And I'm not going to say her name. But I'm thankful to those people who came and told me on that Monday morning. But the difficulty was, at that point, I'd already got to that sort of like 60 kilograms, and I was a very, very healthy, fit weight. And this man that I thought I really liked was telling me that my body repulsed him. And I believed it. There was nothing repulsive about my body at that point. My body was great. But that's the power of what can come through people that, have different expectations. Or, he had been in the bodybuilding world for a very, very long time. His perception of a healthy, lean woman, or what he's attracted to, is very different to mine. But at that point, I was a vulnerable person, and that was really hard for me. So what did I do? I was like, fine, screw him. I'm going to get really lean, and I'm going to show him what he's missing. And, and then off I went, and I refused these drugs from this coach. So I went on this deprivation diet, and I remember I gave it absolutely everything. And I drove home from the gym. And I remember one day I had to pull over, because the coach had told me sort of 4 weeks out from my show that I should stop having all salt in my diet. Now, that is incredibly dangerous looking back. Now I understand female physiology, and it makes no sense whatsoever. But taking sodium out of your body is incredibly dangerous. And what happened was, I was driving home and I couldn't feel my limbs. So I pulled over twice just to get back, and I got to my friends. So I wasn't going home, I was going to my friends. And I remember I got there, I sat on the sofa, I stood up again, and then I passed out. And I remember waking up to my friend's mum saying, Emily, if you don't eat, then I need to call an ambulance, because this has got ridiculous. So again, advice from a coach, that led me to being in a situation that was incredibly dangerous. Now, at the beginning of all of this, when my mum cottoned on to what was going on with my desire to get thin, she's a nurse, and for her, I knew it was difficult. And she said to me, right, can we agree on a code word? If things get out of control, Emily, let's have a code word that you say, so I know that I'm allowed to come and support you, or support putting a stop to whatever you're doing. Because I am, and my mum listens to this, I do what I want to do. I think my mum wanted the ability to be able to know when to say enough is enough and when I would embrace that. So our code word was pineapple. And I remember my friend's mum said, if you need to eat. So I ate something, and I called my mum and I said, pineapple. She's like, okay, I've got you. So went home. I said to her, Mum, I need to do this competition. I've worked so hard. I've come this far. I still need to do it, but I'm ill. Like, I'm really ill. So that moment, she was like, Emily, I'm supporting you. I'm behind you, but we need you to be healthy, and we need to take action now. So fortunately, I found another coach who had a lot more experience with female physiology. So I reached out to him and said, we need your help. I've got my show coming up. I'm committed, I'm entered. I need help. And you might listen to this and think, well, why, Emily, why don't you just quit? Because I just don't quit. And because I was so determined to get on that stage and stand up there with other lean women after being, in such a war with my body for so long. So I was like, no, I'm doing it. So I got a new coach, and he helped me get to the stage in the healthiest way possible. Still not healthy, but as healthy as I could. Now, over that period of preparing for getting on the stage, it was about 16 weeks, and I went from a size 14 to a size 4. And I remember standing up on the stage and thinking, like, I've done it, I've cracked it. But at this point, I knew things were unhealthy, but did I own that? Not really. I was just like, I've cracked it. And then little did I know, I actually did well in the competition, and I qualified for British level. So then straight away, I'm like, oh my God, like, I'm thin. I've always wanted to be thin. And now I'm qualifying. I was made for this sport. This is my destiny. This is, what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. But the reality is obviously, looking back, it was not my destiny, and it was a very dangerous sport for me. I thought when I got off the stage that I'd be absolutely fine, but I wasn't. I remember I went to Dubai a couple of weeks later, and I absolutely lost the plot there. I was exercising sort of 3 times a day. I was fixating over every calorie I was eating. I was pacing the beach because my mind was just constantly thinking about food, because I was so malnourished, being a size 4. And I remember one night, after just restricting since I got there, I just said, right, I'm going to eat whatever. And I ate pizza, chips, pudding, tiramisu, went back to the hotel where I made all of the chocolates and sweets that were in the room. And I thought this behavior was completely normal. And I probably consumed about 6,000 calories in the space of 2 hours. And I thought it was totally normal. But at that point I thought, do you know what? Coming to Dubai 2 weeks after the show was not a good idea. It's too far away from my home comforts. I've been in the gym and eating prepped food for 16 weeks, living and breathing it. No wonder I'm not getting on here. So I got home and I was like, I'll be fine when I get home. Sadly, I wasn't fine when I got home. I had a lack of control around food. But when I say a lack of control, that's when laxative abuse was coming in, purging, not eating at all. And my brain was constantly fixated on food from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep. And that's even if I did get any sleep. And it's really hard to explain what your brain does. But when you've been so heavily malnourished, your brain all it wants to do is to replenish the fat cells and get you back to a normal, healthy weight. So the only way it can signal that is to basically put food in the forefront of your mind at all times. But what you don't have is that trigger that says you've had enough, you've had a sensible portion size, stop. That moment there, it doesn't come up for you. You just continue eating and eating and eating and eating, and there's no sort of signal to say enough. And then you're obviously very uncomfortable, and your body, you know, goes into shock. And this was where, you know, I was trapped in this. So at that point, you know, I ended up saying to my mum, I need help. And I had some support with the Priory to enable me to, you know, find harmony with my body. Anyway, I got to, so after Dubai, I got home, went to the Priory, and they said, are you going to continue competing? And I said, yes. And they said, well, we can't help you, because with competing, you lose weight and you gain weight, and you lose weight and you gain weight. It's called, you know, your prep, and then you're off season. And they said, you know, you've got to make a decision. And I was like, I'm doing it. I'm competing because it's the only time I've ever felt worthy with my body. That's what was going on inside my mind. So I decided, right, you know, well, I didn't realize at the time, this was my last show, the biggest one, the British, I'm doing it, and I'm going to go all out for this. And I prepped for it, and I met Henry, my husband now, 5 weeks before the British. And I pushed so hard for this show, but I remember when I was up on the stage, I was just weak and miserable and broken in so many ways as well. But I'd finally met somebody that, you know, I really did quite like, and I was breaking my mum's heart by watching, you know, myself get so thin and deprive myself of foods and things like that. So I remember on the stage holding my pose, looking down at the judges and thinking, there's 10 men that are older than my dad staring at me right now, judging my bum on how good it looks in comparison to other women. What am I doing? And I got off stage, I grabbed my suitcase, and I came out the back door, and I was like, I'm done. I just remember seeing my mum's face, like, thank God she's done. But being done did not mean that all was okay, because at this point, I hadn't had a period for 3 years, and I was, you know, heavily experiencing disordered eating, and had a lot of problems with body image and my behaviors with food. So it was time to step back and actually sort my life out. And the difficulty here is that I'd been, you know, a 16 to 18 and a compulsive eater and up that end of the spectrum. And then I'd been, you know, a size 4, not allowing myself any food, you know, selling my soul to exercise. And I could really achieve both of these ends of the spectrum, but I'd never been the Emily in the middle that had that balance, that was a healthy size, that ate some treats, but not all of them, that did some exercise rather than not at all or too much. I'd never done that because my personality so heavily favored the all, you know, the all or the nothing. And for once in my life, I had to address the fact that this was the one thing that I needed to conquer in regards to finding that middle ground. And it felt really scary to me. So that was my mission at this point. So I had a lot of health implications and a lot of mindset implications going on in my life. I had Henry and I had my mum supporting me heavily. So the first step was I worked with the eating disorder unit, and amongst Henry and my mum and the unit, they supported me to be able to gradually increase my weight and to find some harmony with food over that period. And at that point, you know, even just simplistic things like, you know, cooking with oil was a big no. And even getting used to oil being in the house was a big thing for me, which is quite common amongst people with ED. So that was a huge journey, and there was lots of tears, and there was lots of moments where, you know, perhaps it was hard for Henry and my mum to understand what was going on, because, you know, it would be like, I can't possibly have that tiny piece of cheese. I just can't. And I would just cry, because part of me knew that I should be able to have that cheese, but I just physically couldn't have that cheese. And there was just moments, you know, socializing, things like that. And I'd always celebrate my mum, because she took a weekend out, and she went through a course of how to support, you know, somebody you care about that's going through an eating disorder. It's a fantastic charity, actually. And it taught her so many tools to be able to support me. And she's been absolutely fantastic in doing that. They really were my rocks through that period. So I started with the ED, went through that process, but also I had a lot of physiological issues. So, you know, being young, and I had no libido, I had a lot of joint pain, low mood, and I then decided, right, I'm going to do some tests and find out what's going on internally inside my body. And that's when I revealed that I had postmenopausal estrogen levels at the age of 22. I had an underactive thyroid, and it all sort of sung true as to why I was struggling so much with physiologically how I was feeling. So I actually went on HRT for 6 months to support me to regulate my estrogen levels. Now, a big piece of losing a lot of weight and running with low body fat percentages and things like that is it can have a huge impact on your reproductive system. And as from my situation, it can lead to low levels of estrogen, and your body's just so clever, you know, it doesn't want to utilize energy on your reproductive system. It's not a necessity to keep you alive. And if you're barely feeding your body as it is, then that's that can be one of the first things that goes. And that's what happened to me. So at age 22, you know, on HRT with no libido, trying to explain to my partner that I knew that I thought I definitely was like, I want to marry this man, you know, at 22, saying, I'm really sorry, like, I'm not feeling it, and I haven't got, you know, that going on, you know, sexually, and how do I explain that? You know, that was difficult, really difficult. It was like I had thoughts here, but my body just was not cooperating with me. So it's a gift now, because when a woman says to me, you know, I'm entering into the menopause, or, you know, I'm postmenopausal, I go, I hear you. I get it. I know how you feel when you want to get out of bed in the morning. I know how that might feel for you right now. And HRT was actually absolutely fantastic for me. And then the hypothyroid, so the underactive thyroid, again, was an outcome of my approach with my, you know, ridiculous dieting process. And this actually down-regulated my thyroid, and the thyroid contributes to your metabolic rate. So I was running with a slow metabolism at this point, because of something I induced on myself, because of the way I lost the weight in such a, you know, a crash dieting way. So basically, yeah, I'd gone from this 18 to a size 4. I'd inflicted a load of medical issues upon myself, as well as huge psychological issues in relation to food and my body image. The reality is I was more miserable at size 4 than I was at size 18. So because the whole approach to getting to a size 4, and the size 4 being way too small, was so wrong, because I had such awful advice, and so I didn't have the right support around me. And if anything, no, not if anything, 100%, the support I did have led me into a very dark hole, because these people didn't understand female physiology. They didn't understand how the female body works. And look where it led me. So at that point, you know, I had to fix all of this. I had to fix my problem and get to a middle ground, Emily. So doing the ED, had some support, obviously started being medicated with HRT and medication for my thyroid dysfunction. And that's when I went from the size 4 up to a size 8 to 10. Now, there was definitely a good few wobbles over that period and finding that balance. But it was the most incredible journey looking back. And teaching myself to have some, but not all, teaching myself to embrace my body getting bigger without fear of getting back to a size 18. You know, all of those moments were just so, so important. So after getting to a size 10 and being there for a while and having harmony around food and my body image, I'd built up a small following online of people that had watched me, you know, dramatically change my body. And this was inspiring for them, even though at that point, they didn't really know, you know, what was going on behind the scenes. And neither did I in relation to how damaging it was. They were just seeing the outcome. And I guess when you go through a journey like this and you know wholeheartedly what every step feels like of being a bigger person, a smaller person, having an ED, having to find balance, you feel like the most qualified person in the world to talk to somebody else that might be going through a similar journey or experiencing the same problems that you are. And I just remember, like, I had this social media following, it was small, and I would have women reach out to me and say, you know, I really want to lose weight and I would love your help. Like, I'm really struggling. And at that point, I just knew, right, this is your calling. This is what you should be doing with your life, because if anybody gets it, it is you. And you, Emily, have an obligation to support women to go from where they are now to where they want to be in a healthy way. And it is your responsibility to raise a red flag if somebody wants to achieve a goal that is unhealthy or working against their female physiology. Women deserve to be able to go through a healthy, sustainable transformation. But we live in a world, we live in a weight loss industry that is not regulated. Therefore, all those people that led me into that dark hole, like, I want to stand up against them and be the shining light for people that want to or need to go through a weight loss journey, knowing that they can create something that's sustainable and that they, you know, that isn't going to hinder their health. So that's when I decided I want to do this. I really want to support people. So I went off and I did my qualifications. So I did my exercise and nutritional certification. I quickly realized that inside that there wasn't really enough or any in relation to the level of complexity that you really need to understand as a coach to support women with weight loss. There wasn't that level of complexity in the course. Although it certified me and I could be insured and I could actually deliver my service, it just wasn't enough. But fortunately for me, because I had so much chaos through my journey, I did so much self-study myself, and I sourced a lot of testing from the States, and I experted in female physiology because it was something I needed to wholeheartedly understand to fix myself. So I had that knowledge there in place already, did my certification, and then I further studied in specific areas that were really important to me to be able to support clients. So that was looking at all hormonal implications. That was, you know, understanding PCOS, thyroid dysfunction, insulin resistance, chronic fatigue, everything to do with menopause, all the things that come up that need to be considered when going through a weight loss journey. So I spent a lot of time doing that. And then I started working with clients, and it was transformative. It still is. My own development of finding my happy ground and reaching that, you know, that size 10, like how did I do it? So a big piece there is understanding actual physiology. So like I said, I went and self-studied to fully understand how internally my body worked. And this was absolutely fascinating to me because it was when I really stepped away from the eat less, move more. When I actually started to understand the science behind how my body worked, it so clearly highlighted to me how much I damaged my body with the approaches that I took, with the awful counsel I had available to me at the time. So actually understanding how my body worked was a big piece of how I did this and got to that middle ground. And the other piece is the psychological support. So I use a combination of therapies to be able to really enable me to unleash the lid and find my happy ground in the middle. And that was, a combination of identifying where my behaviors with food really came from and why I had this huge control piece over food, and, finding that harmony around my body image and how I felt about my body image. I shared with you today a couple of partners I had and how, they had a great effect on me and how I saw my body image, but I've had to work through that with the right therapy and support in place to be able to find harmony with my body. And that's the key here. It's about looking at the physiological bits, the practical bits, the science behind internally what's going on with the body and externally through your composition. But then it's also understanding your brain and understanding that both need support, practical support and psychological support, to be able to wholeheartedly find a happy, healthy, sustainable you. Both need to be considered. And I looked at both and I invested in both and I experted in both. And that enabled me collectively to create an outcome that really is, peace and harmony. And that's when, I started supporting clients on a one-to-one basis and using a lot of the skill set that I'd learned. And then I decided, actually, I want to build an experience for women which is full of experts and support that can take someone through a full 360-degree journey where they have everything they need to be able to go from A to B and to really actually evolve and create a new identity. So for me, at that point, I decided, right, I'm going to go and pull in all the incredible people I know and create a really robust program to be able to deliver for clients. And that's when I came together with Kelly, our psychologist, Colleen, our hypnosis and NLP. We've also got Gary, our sleep coach. We've got Melina, who heads up yoga. We've got Camilla, who specializes in gut health. And for me, it was about bringing as much education and support to my clients. So when they go through this journey, it's about way more than dropping a dress size. And for them, I need them to really, truly, wholeheartedly understand how their body works and how their brain works. And there is no point us supporting them to lose 2 stone if they look in the mirror and they're still unhappy 2 stone lighter. And that is likely to happen if we haven't done the mindset work up here to free them from all these limitations and experiences they've had in their lives that perhaps have led them to really feeling at war with their body. So that was the approach that I had when I wanted to create FitQueen. And now we're in a position where we've got our experts on board, and then we also have our coaches who are all certified specifically in female physiology. So that's an additional qualification that all us coaches go through, because it enables us to know that we have a top level of expertise to be able to support our clients. Way more than just a nutrition PT certification, which doesn't really cover any of the really important bits to go through this transformation. And now my job is very much overseeing the team and supporting FitQueen as a whole and the clients within that, and continuing to talk openly and being vulnerable about my experiences and the moments in my life that have been really difficult. And that is a summary of, how I got to where I am today and why FitQueen is really here, because I believe women deserve to have a platform where they can go through their weight loss journey, knowing that they are in the safest hands, knowing that they are working towards a goal with a coach where both the client and the coach have sustainability at the forefront and health at the forefront. And you can create an amazing transformation in the most healthiest of ways. And I'm not one to go back and go, if I could, I would change this, I would change that. You know, what I've been through is what I've been through, and it's taught me so much. And I can support a woman on so many multiple layers, subject to what she's going through, because I've been there and I've walked the walk. But equally, I could have gone from a size 18 to a size 10 in a much easier way without damaging my health. And even to this day, the decisions I made to crash diet have led me to being in a position where, you know, I do want to have a baby one day, but we have to put a bit more thought and care around how we will do that because of my sensitive reproductive system. You know, I am still medicated for my thyroid, and that was something that came off the back end of competing. There's many things that came up and continue to come up now that affect me because of that decision. So I am so passionate about enabling women to just have it all and to feel free with their body image and to feel content and healthy. And we all deserve to feel that. And it doesn't have to be as chaotic or dramatic as it was for me. And that's why FitQueen is here today. And that gives you an insight into my journey and why I've created what I have. And I absolutely love what we do. And yeah, it's been really lovely to share my thoughts with you today.